effective review meeting means individual teachers are able to feedback on individual students and then work together to collaborate on all ideas. The most effective thing that you can do is share the breadth of experience and observations that you have.
It's quite organic in that because you've become this team of teachers that wouldn't normally work together, it can be quite informal, and I think that's worked well with us. So often Amy will talk about what worked well with her and what she saw, and then we can kind of butt in and say, oh, we saw this and we saw that.
The starter was went okay, do you think? They talked about it. They didn't notice for a while what the problems were with the products, but I think it got the idea across of what we were doing.
Oh, you asked me to look at student A.
Yeah.
Again, he was sat upright watching like he was in our first lesson that we were in, and he was kind of following you around the room, and it really looked like he was paying attention to what you were saying. He didn't initially start talking about the task, and he kind of looked around, and I don't know if he was deciding who he wanted to have that conversation with. And then the table as a whole really started discussing it rather than in pairs. And I didn't think he had a very loud voice on his table.
Right.
He kind of said things now and again. I think he was listening to his peers, but I don't think he shared his ideas, perhaps.
Okay. Yeah.
Didn't you hear the key word? You heard what you wanted to hear out of him. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't want to say the word. I think I used checks, but I hadn't actually necessarily used the word quality, which is what I was looking for in them, and then student B said it. So that was good. Going on to the main part of the lesson, it was interesting to see the way that they manoeuvred around the stations. I think you noticed that student B was immediately kind of going to someone else.
Yes. So he found someone to kind of replace you almost, and followed another student around. They initially went to the station which you identified as being the last one, so don't start here. So they both moved. Student B, rather than making decisions by himself, followed the peer, followed his friend, and then was talking through the process with his peer rather than perhaps reading it himself. And then that, I thought, probably affected the fact that I don't think he put his masking tape all the way round his paperclip, so when he drilled it, it cracked. And I spoke to him about that, and he was able to identify what went wrong, but he didn't identify that it went wrong because he didn't read the instructions. So he was very clear with, next time I'd need to do this, and this happened because this did. But he wasn't able to say, it's because I didn't read the instructions properly. And I wonder if...
Did you say to him?
Yes.
Oh, right, okay.
He did. I wonder if that, because that was quite near the start, I wonder if that is because perhaps at the start he was relying on his peer to kind of talk through the process with him rather than him going at it independently. But I think he improved in the lesson.
He did move away, didn't he, at the end? Because there was a good point to all that in that corner, because he was trying to mark it out, and then he looked at it and said, oh, that doesn't look straight. Well, I don't mean straight, I mean vertical. And he took his tape off, which is maybe where that problem was, and measured it all out again, which was typical of the last lesson when he wanted 3 minutes of view. He was absolutely meticulous, and it just shone through, I want this to be right. It was great. And he measured it again, but I think then he was behind, and that panics him a bit, doesn't it, if he's behind and not keeping up with everybody else. The other one, the student A, we think last time was a little bit, but he was bothered today, and he asked a couple of questions before he was quality control, so before that he knew that was happening. I wonder if there's a set measurement for this, and he was here, which is a pretty good question actually, for your work, isn't it?
Yes.
And his peers joined in, and but followed it through. And then when it came to the leading the group, that was fantastic. Really, really good.
Both of them actually led their groups fantastically, I thought.
I agree.
And managed to start up a lot of the discussions about each part of the acrylic strip and what could have gone well or not, or how they could have actually checked it for their quality. I think they
probably
initiated
for different reasons, actually.
You just mentioned that student B was very well organised. I think perhaps you heard at the start, has everyone got pen, has everyone got paper? I mean, straight away he was into, and he enjoyed it. You could tell he was enjoying that. And he was jotting them down. Right, has everyone filled that in? Yeah, okay, the next one.
Yeah.
And that's lovely to see.
And it gives them that responsibility, and I think it makes them feel
they've got
feel
ownership
good.
over it, absolutely. hearing the conversations between all of the students, not just our focus students, was just wonderful. You know, the way they were helping each other out. You know, how smooth does it need to be? Or, you know, come and feel the edge of this one. That's about how right. You know, that support from everyone was just, I thought it was wonderful.
Well, it mirrors what we said on team review, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, with all respect, your work was done before this lesson. They were working harder than you,
Yeah.
which is how it should be, isn't
Yeah.
it? And they were working, because talk is work, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because they were learning from each
They
other.
were
And I
coming
was-
to their own conclusions. And
Absolutely.
doing
And it didn't matter if
themselves.
they were right or wrong, really, in some ways, did it?
No.
That they were articulating your process that
Yeah.
when they do their project, like we said to Jay, will be paramount.
Yeah. I actually really liked not doing a demo for each station, which could have been quite easy for me to do. But then that would have given them less to talk about, because I would have told them that, well, cutting out, you've got to make sure that your acrylic's further down in the bench, in the vise. And so they actually discovered it themselves. And I think you learn more from that, don't you, rather than just watching.
Yeah, definitely. It was
One-
really,
Sorry, go on.
really interesting that student B said, oh, the demonstrations are good because Miss shows us how, but these instructions are good because they show us when. So there were, I think, what was working well with them, which ties into our research, that stepped process of 1, do this, 2, do that, 3, do this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he meant by that. You show them how, that shows them when to do them.
I mean, one wasn't meaning to be rude, but he said, all we do is copy, miss. We're here, we're doing it for ourselves. And
Yeah.
again, that's what you want, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if you demo, they will just go and copy. But they won't learn from their mistakes.
I'm definitely going to use the written instructions. I'm still going to use demonstrations because I think they do need to see it happening in some cases. But I'm also going to make sure that I choose students to take lead and actually hand over some of the lesson rather than me or always dictating it. I think they could have a go.